Moore and Lorne Teeter?
I do, yes,
Okay, you let them in, please.
absolutely. We're good to go, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so we're live.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are back in open session. I'm going to report out. In executive session, we received legal advice regarding an administrator and an update on grievances. No votes were taken. I'm going to ask for a motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to second,
So motion's been made and seconded, and I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
yes.
Mrs. Pave.
Okay.
I usually do try and keep track of this, and I vote yes, so the minutes are sealed. So welcome to our January 12th, 2021 Tiverton School Committee meeting. I am going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that
Run into
motion.
the pledge.
Oh, yes.
All right,
we should.
Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, sing my flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
One nation,
under God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for
for all.
all.
And then I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
Okay, I'm going to just ask if there's any objections. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. I'm going to ask for motion to move up item 9, new business.
So moved.
second,
Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
yes.
Ms. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are on item 9A, THS 2 codes program. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm actually going to throw this right to Principal Ashley to introduce this program and two of our wonderful teachers who are here tonight to explain it to you.
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and it's a delight to welcome Mr. Teeter and Ms. Moore, who are with us here. Mr. Teeter teaches our AP US Government course, and Ms. Moore teaches our AP Computer Science course. And both are here to talk about a new initiative through the Rhode Island Department of Education statewide, where a select group of schools are looking at how these two courses can partner and support our students. So with that, I will turn it over to them, and we have a presentation, I believe, Mr. Carnevale.
Okay, I guess I'll get started. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Lorne Teeter, and as Mr. Ashley said, I teach AP US Government and Politics at Tiverton High School. And this year, myself and Ms. Moore, Judy Moore, have been working with the College Board to kind of identify a connection between my AP US Government course and her AP Computer Science Principles course, and how we can kind of get both courses working together and kids out in the world as civically engaged as possible. So the first slide we have here is who is two codes. We're working with the College Board team of Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Department of Education, and 17 other ambassadors from 8 different schools in Rhode Island. And this is the first year this has been, this is a pilot program. This is the first year we've ever had anything to do with this.
So the mission statement, this was Lorne and I developed this mission statement, which is a work in progress as the program continues on. Then, we may be tweaking this. But the statement at this point is by 2025, Tiverton High School's 2 codes pathway will sustain enrollment in AP US History and AP Computer Science principles in civic tech, providing pathways and encouraging inclusivity to all students for future careers in technology and government. So with that, we're going to talk about societal issues. Go ahead, Lorne, do you want this slide?
Yeah, sure. So basically what we've been laying out with the other schools and the Rhode Island Department of Education is that there is a societal issue especially recently with the integration of civics and civic engagement and technology, and how technology can play an important role in civic engagement. And the basic issues that we've been discussing are civic ignorance and polarization, whether it's from different politicians or just the fact that a lot of kids feel disconnected from politics. And they feel like getting the kids involved in these classes and in this kind of program where they see connections between computer science principles and current civic engagement can kind of help our community out for kids who want to get engaged civically but might not have the confidence or know-how. The content of these courses is more fundamental than ever to be successful in for a 21st century college and a career. We kind of focused on the fact that Tiverton has kind of a farming community. Judy brought this up at one of the meetings that we had, and we kind of want to tailor it to each community is going to be different. So our mission statement will be different, and what we are trying to do is look for ways where we can kind of tailor the civic engagement and computer science principles into ways that benefit Tiverton. And one of the things that came up was the farming community that Tiverton has and how they can use the technology. We can use the technology to get the people involved, however it may be. It's still a work in progress, but that's one of the issues for the community that we are focusing on, as well as knowledge, skills, and agency. And there's going to be some project requirements that Judy and I will work together to coordinate between the 2 classes to kind of bring them together.
And to expand on Lorne's input on that slide, the civic tech is actually really a 21st century for students to use 21st century tools to solve 21st century's problems. We want to provide a new generation of students and young adults with the skills to engage with democracy in a digital world. And these are the issues that we're seeing, these days. Again, college and career readiness is very important, and that's one of the key takeaways that we talk about at the meetings that we attend.
So these were just some examples that we had on this previous slide. So issues with 21st century, Facebook, antitrust, which is in the news right now, policy, politics, and technology is always in the forefront. We were talking about, the kids working in computer science to develop apps for civic engagement. So we were introduced to a couple different apps that have come out recently where you can kind of gauge your political leaning, and it'll tell you. There's one in Rhode Island that if you gauge your political leaning by answering a couple of questions, and then they will tell you what politicians that you should be looking at, whose methods line up with your ideals. So it's kind of in that vein where we want kids to start thinking about what they can do to add to just civic engagement. And that might include apps and app development. We definitely know the space program is changing. And as we know, SpaceX is becoming a huge company. We were thinking there's opportunities in graphic design as we brought up the Hope poster for Barack Obama when he ran for president. So there's many different ways that this could take shape. And these were just a few of the examples that we were thinking of.
So as you can see here, there's work to be done. This is a pilot year for this program. Of the schools that are participating in the program, then Rhode Island is the only state that College Board is implementing this project in. So it's very exciting for us. And there is no cookie cutter one design for this project between the schools, the 8 schools that are participating. It can look different, as Lorne said, depending on your community and your population at your school. All ambassadors, the ambassadors, which are what Lorne and I are considered, and school administrators, RIDE and College Board members of this program, our stakeholders, and what we're working on is really building this program out. We're going to be creating a toolkit that we can share with other schools of how to implement such a project. So it's ours to create, and we're very excited about it.
Sorry,
go
Judy,
ahead.
go ahead. We put in a link at the bottom in case you guys are interested in watching. They showed us this video at one of our meetings for 2 codes, and it's a couple of women ambassadors for civic tech talking about what their definition of civic tech is. As there is no concrete definition for this program yet, or what civic tech is, because it's so wide, it's so broad. You guys can take a look at that video and see what they had to say starting at about 11:30. It's only, they talk for a couple minutes, and if you're interested in learning more about what we've been shown, we did include that link for you.
And in closing, I just have a paragraph that I want to read from you. It's from Prepare Rhode Island, which was part of our packet that from the 2 codes. Technology is the code of the economy and innovation. Democracy, the code of our public life. At a time when these big forces are colliding in unexpected ways in creating unprecedented challenges, students deserve the chance to master both disciplines. Our country needs students ready to shape the future, not just cope with it. That takes shared work, and the College Board is eager to work with others who share the 2 codes vision. The end.
All right.
So one of the initiatives that they wanted us to get this out there. The College Board wanted us to get this program just in the minds of people, just to let people know that it is going on. And I think this was a good step towards doing that tonight, having us on here. So appreciate you guys having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I think it sounds very exciting.
Yeah, great. Thank you,
It does
guys.
sound
both.
very exciting.
So I'm gonna open it up to questions from the committee first. And again, I really commend you on getting involved with this. It's hard to think of a more timely or more urgently needed thing in this area right at the moment. So Elaine, anything else?
Do you know any of the other communities that are getting involved in this program?
I do. So the other schools are Beacon Charter, Exeter West Greenwich, Tollgate, Middletown, Situate, North Kingstown, Central High, and Ponegantset.
Nice, nice. Very nice. I think it's very appropriate to begin getting involved in this type of program simply because of what's happened in the world in the past year or so. Things are going the direction things are going in, and I'm hoping that it's going to excite the kids, you know, get them more interested in becoming involved in the government and the nation, and I hope so. It sounds very interesting. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to add this, you know, to implement this at Tiverton High School.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mike, questions?
I want to make a comment to Judy and Lauren. I think you did a wonderful job presenting. Thank you for opening the door a little bit to the committee and also to our admin folks that are here. I have, in full disclosure, a daughter that's at the middle school in 5th grade, and I have one that's in 1st grade at CAFSA. And all they want to do is social media. They love space and astronomy. They got a big telescope for Christmas. They can hook their iPhone up to it and take pictures. So This is what's going to help excite our youth, and exactly what Elaine said, this should be something that they're going to be passionate about. So thank you for opening our eyes to it, and I look forward to seeing where it's going to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Diane?
I'll just echo everyone else's sentiments. Ms. Moore and Mr. Teeter, thank you for taking the initiative to get our schools involved with this. I know, Ms. Moore, you in particular have led the way for us as far as computer science and developing that program from where it once was several years back to where we stand today, and certainly seeing that door wide open to a great future. And a lot of the questions I would have had have been answered. The other comment that I would like to make that I think is really, aside from the fact that, I think we can all agree that the merging of these two topics is becoming more and more relevant with every passing day. And I think one of the great things I see about this is the merging of the humanities with technology. Because I know that quite often you have kids who are tech-minded, you have kids who are more socially minded. They don't always meet at the same place. And I see this as a wonderful opportunity to get that merging to happen and to show both sides of that equation some other things that they could be thinking of to merge into their studies and their interests, both career and educationally. So again, I echo everyone else's sentiments. Thank you, and thanks for the presentation.
Deb?
Yes, thank you both for the presentation. And I apologize if I missed this, but what were the mechanics of the course offering since it's a pilot year? Like what grade, how many students, how?
So there's really no set grade. The people at Rhode Island Department of Education and College Board have told us that there's no need for the kids to even take part in both classes, just to show them that it is possible. And the more kids that sign up, the better. Honestly, that's how Judy and I feel. So we definitely, go ahead, sorry.
So for Tiverton, are we gonna just offer one of each in that pilot year?
So we are right now doing AP US Government and Politics. This is the first year that this course has been run, and I'm teaching that. And I believe Judy has been teaching AP Computer Science and Principles for a number of years. So we're just looking to get both courses with some sort of common curriculum at some points of the year, and that we can work together to get the kids who are in both classes or maybe just taking one of the classes to just recognize the importance of the congruence of civic tech.
Gotcha, Lorne. So you're integrating that into what you're already doing.
Correct.
This isn't gonna be a new separate.
No, they did say though that there are potentials for pathways, like a 3-course pathway that the kids could get involved in, but that's not necessary. But that will be something that'll be a bridge that we cross once this program has more leg to it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
They do define the program, the 2-course program, as having 3 different levels. The base level are the expanders. Those are schools that have no current plans. They're not offering either of the computer science courses, but they're tapping their toe in the water. They're thinking about it. They're participating in our program. They're thinking about it. Those are the expanders. Then there are the capacity builders that have 1 course now and or are planning one for the next year, and maybe thinking about adding the 2nd course. And then the 3rd level are the innovators that are already offering both classes. So that's us at Tiverton, between Lauren's class and the computer science class. Fantastic. Thank you, Judy.
Okay, great. Any questions from any of our administrators? And any questions?
So
Yep.
I just wanted to add real quick, I couldn't be more proud of Mr. Teeter and Ms. Moore. It's obviously very exciting for our students, their incredible hard work, and more to come for sure. But hats off, Mr. Teeter, Ms. Moore. Thank you, really.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Agreed. And any questions from the public or comments from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Just one comment from Miss Sally Black, saying happy and healthy New Year to all. That is it.
Happy New Year to you too, Sally. I know you're watching somewhere. All right. Great. Well, again, thank you both very much again. And we look forward to hearing more from this or from you on this. Okay.
Do we
great.
need a motion to approve? Or is it just to give?
I think this was just informational.
Correct, because we're already doing it, is my
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to mark that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So we are up to item 9B, APSAT test scores. Dr. Sanchioni, Mr. Ashley. Peter, you're muted.
Never mute myself. Thank you for the reminder. So thank you, Dr. Larkin. Yes, annually we present our AP and SAT scores to you. I'll just remind the committee that last year we were in the middle of a pandemic when many of these tests were administered. And so comparing ourselves across boundaries here can be challenging, but we still want to present our results. We want to show you where we are. It helps us understand what our strengths are and where we have our opportunities to grow. So at this time, I'll turn it to Principal Ashley to take you through the results.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. And correct, I'll speak to how obviously this year, 2020 is different with the pandemic, but we'll get into some of the details here. So we can proceed to the next slide and begin by looking at our post-secondary plans for our students, our graduates. And so beginning here, we look at, we're always proud of all of our graduates. And in particular here, we have some of the top schools that our graduates go to. You can see George Washington, Villanova, Brown, but outside of these particular schools, of course, we really are tremendously proud of all of our graduates. They go on to mostly 2- and 4-year schools, but other plans too. And, our goal is always just making sure that they have a plan and they're successful with that. So here we just look at some of the specific schools that our graduates generally tend to. Looking at the past years, you can see here the local schools in Rhode Island and in the surrounding area are generally more popular with our graduates. And what we're seeing here is our graduates are also taking a sharper eye at the financials of post-secondary education. And so many of our graduates have actually been kind of open and honest about looking at community schools and saying if they can save a little bit money and enroll in a 2-year school and then transfer to a 4-year school and still get that 4-year diploma, that's something that increasingly be considering. So moving on to the next slide, you can just see here, this is just a tally of the total number of graduates that have gone on to post-secondary education. So last year we had approximately 80% of our graduates go on to a 2- or 4-year school. Then we have a number of other graduates go on to military or trade or other technical schools. And this is, in regards to, slight variations in terms of the number of graduates in each of the graduating years. So before we get into taking a look at our advanced placement or AP scores, just a note going back to what Dr. Sanchioni mentioned about 2020 and the pandemic. So as we all know, last spring, we were home, we were distance learning, and the College Board, which is the governing body that covers advanced placement classes, decided to continue with the AP exams. So for those that aren't familiar, AP courses are the most rigorous courses offered at Tiverton High School. They follow a introductory college level curriculum. So again, this is a high school student taking a college level curriculum, extremely rigorous. They start with some pre-summer work and they get right into day one, going all the way through. And then the first 2 weeks of May, on each day of the first 2 weeks of May, there are 2 AP exams. And so the College Board said in the last spring that they wanted to continue with those exams with modifications. And the reason there's two main modifications that are important to note. One was that all of the AP exams last spring were administered online. That was the first time the College Board had ever done that. Obviously, given the health concerns, they had to. But that was a significant change compared to the standard in-person meeting in a classroom type of setting. And the second was just the nature of the test itself. So last spring, every AP exam consisted of 2 to 4 open-ended or constructed response questions that were only 45 minutes total. Might sound like a lot of time, but when you compare that to the standard 3-hour exam for an AP course, that's obviously very different. And so we still feel like these results are really valuable and informational for us in terms of our planning and instruction. But just those 2 notes again, they were online and they were 45 minutes as opposed to the standard 3 hours. So with that, we can transition to the next slide. One of the key points of this slide that we're really proud of actually is just the broad theme of this presentation tonight is we are all about expanding the access to all of our high school students. We really stress that an AP course is an option for all of our kids, and we push our kids to push themselves to take at least one of these AP courses and do well. So AP scores are scored on a range of 1 to 5, with 3 or higher being a passing score. And so you can see, compared with 5 years ago, we've tripled the number of students who have taken and passed an AP exam. And so that's really credit to all of our teachers. Obviously, you heard from Mr. Teeter and Ms. Moore tonight about the work we're doing, and those are just 2 of our AP exams. And so you'll see here that we still have areas for growth and points we're working on, but what we'll show here is tonight is we can increase enrollment, meaning increase participation in AP exams and AP coursework, and still have students do really well in them. So with that, we'll dive right into the first course here. So we start with AP Biology. So for each of the AP courses tonight, you'll see this first graph, which is just Tiverton High School's history, 5-year history. And then the next slide you'll see in a moment is comparing Tiverton High School to Rhode Island and then global. Again, knowing College Board administers these AP courses across many countries. So again, AP scores are 1 to 5. You can see the far right is 2020. And so we recognize this is an area that we do need to make some progress and work on, but it is something that we're focusing on. And I want to just, if we go on to the next slide, we can take a little bit closer look. So we know that for AP Bio, it was a tough year last year. We still feel like our students did well, but one of the pieces that we're doing is I'm meeting with each of the AP teachers and have met with them, and we're taking a deep look at these results and the questions that were asked, even though they weren't as many that were asked, and just looking at how those questions relate to our curriculum in the pacing guide. And so we can look at the adjustments we need to make so that we do a better job of aligning the curriculum and the pacing, especially this year, so that our students are as prepared as they can be for this. So moving on next, we have AP Calculus. This is one of the most rigorous AP courses that we have. You can see this is Tiverton High School's history. It's been a tough one for us, but we have a teacher who's newer with this course, who is really, really motivated and really working hard, did some training last summer, is continuing training this school year. And I feel really, really confident and positive that this coming year, 2021, we're going to see some pretty significant improvement. And one of the pieces, just to talk about what this teacher is looking at, is the College Board has a new resource called My AP. That has dozens and dozens of instructional videos that are anywhere from 3 to 20 minutes in length on very specific topics. And then they have real targeted questions that are actually similar to the types of questions that students will see on the AP exam. And so this teacher our calculus teacher, has really taken this to heart and using this as a resource to make sure the students are prepared and will do much better in 2021. And so here you can just see how we compare. Again, we know that AP Calculus is an area of growth for us, but based on what I was talking about earlier, we're very confident about 2021 looking much better for us. So next we have AP Chemistry. So you can see here, this is one of the courses, you can see our history in terms of scores, but this is one of the AP courses where we are proud to say we've increased our enrollment. So typically AP Chemistry, we didn't have that many students, less than a dozen students taking it, but we've expanded that in recent years. If we go on to the next slide, we can see that we're similar to right around where the state average is. And obviously, like I talked about earlier, in terms of looking at these questions and how they align to the curriculum, how we can be better prepared for 2021. So AP Computer Science, so you heard from Ms. Moore. We talk about how this is a new course. It's always a steep learning curve when we start a new AP course, but we're really proud of Ms. Moore's work here. And so you can see we've only had it for 2 years, so relatively new history for us. And on the next slide, when you compare us to Rhode Island and globally, we're right there with the state, meaning we're comparable with teachers in schools that have been doing this for a dozen years. And so as we continue with our third year in the work that Ms. Moore is doing, we're confident that we're just going to continue to expand and do better with this. AP English Language. So there's 2 AP English courses, AP English Language that you're looking at, and in a couple of slides, you'll see the AP English Literature. We're really proud of our 2 AP English teachers. So typically we have one section or one course of an AP. So we have one course of AP US Government, one section of AP Computer Science. But in the last 2 years for AP English Language and AP Literature, we've had to have 2 courses of each because the demand has just increased that much. So we've almost doubled the number of students taking AP English Language and AP English Lit, and at the same time have improved our scores as we've expanded. So you can see that here as you look towards the latter years. And on the next slide, when you compare our scores to the state and globally, we're higher than the average. And so it's really hats off to, again, our teachers really taking this work seriously and looking at the work of our students and how we can continuously improve. And so as we transition, you see here the AP English Literature, similar theme here. We've expanded enrollment, and at the same time, we're doing better. And on the next slide, when you compare us to Rhode Island and globally, we're higher than the average. And so one note just related to this is our AP English teachers are not sitting on their laurels. We have mid-year exams scheduled for next week, and we're viewing next week as a critical opportunity to see how our kids are doing. So one big topic we've been talking about for all AP teachers this year is, if you remember, we started school 2 weeks later this year because of the pandemic. We needed to, but for our AP teachers, they're immediately thinking, well, that exam in May hasn't changed, which means we got 2 weeks less. So we've got to figure out a way to make sure we still meet the demands of the curriculum in less time. And so this next week is a critical time for us. They're going to give similar AP style exams, and then the following week immediately use those results to say what progress, what work do we need to do to make sure the kids are progressing as we expect them to. So AP Physics, this was our first year last year was our first year we expanded it. It was a growth year for us. The AP Physics teacher is really taking it seriously. He recognizes that it was a growing year. The pandemic was tough because for this course, the experiments, the modeling, the physical manipulation is a key component, and we lost a good chunk of that in the spring. And so teachers still worked hard, the kids worked hard. The questions were tough though, and so he's really focusing now on the modeling aspect and looking at how the principles of physics can be exemplified by the physical experiments and tests. And so I'm excited to see the progress of 2021 compared to last year in 2020. So moving on, you'll see next AP Psychology. Proud of this. Our AP Psychology teacher always has high enrollment. The students are really engaged. Typically, one of the projects that they do actually is the AP Psychology students will do a project with our elementary students. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that last spring, but one of the pieces they're getting creative this year is looking to see how they can change that project to still have some of the connection to look at how the theories that they're studying in class can relate to people and what they see either in the environment or in schools. And so on the next slide, you can see here so a little bit of growth, but again, we maintained that enrollment or expanded it. And that AP Psych teacher is looking to really take a deep look at the exams next week and see how the students are doing for progress for 2021. So AP Spanish and Language, we really knocked it out of the park last year. Our AP Spanish teacher was so excited when she saw these results. She had a great group and she had a good feeling going into it, but wasn't really sure, and they just did really well. The students, they spend a lot of time speaking and listening in Spanish in class and writing in Spanish, and the results show. Last year was one of our best years, and when you look at the next slide and compare Tiverton High School's results to the global and the state average, we're well above those averages. So just really proud of our AP Spanish teacher. AP Stats is another course similar to AP English, actually. We're really excited that we've seen expanded enrollment. We have to add another section of AP Stats last year. Meanwhile, still maintaining the progress. So you can see the scores over the last 5 years for Tiverton High School. And one of the pieces that our AP Stats teacher is looking at is additional online resources. And so she just participated in online training an AP called AP Stats Medic to look at speeding up the feedback loop where, they study a new stats principle, the students practice it, the teacher provides that feedback, and then they just keep that cycle going. And this online training resources, the goal is to try to give them through that loop multiple times each lesson so that they continue to grow and learn. And so here you can see the comparison to the state and globally. So we put this slide on here. So we actually had one student who was actually in conversation with Mr. Teeter last year, but took the course. He did very well online on his own. We didn't actually run this course, but we had the result. He was a Tiverton High School student, so he did phenomenal. But this year, 2021, will be the first official year where we have a class of students participating in the AP US Government class. So AP US History, always a really popular AP class. A lot of emphasis on writing. I'm really proud of the work. Even through the pandemic, we did really well. It was one of our better years last year. And one of the key points I talk about with the exams next week is they're really focused next week on seeing where the students are, so that, again, I talk about that pacing so that the kids are ready for the first 2 weeks in May when the exam comes. And so here you can just see the comparison to the state and globally. So just one quick note before we transition here to the SAT. I got just a few more slides. Going back to the AP, is that we are, to all the AP teachers, we've really emphasized the community of the AP teachers this year at the high school and increased the collaboration and communication between them, because there really is kind of a unique demand or need for AP courses in terms of just the rigor of their curriculum, the pacing, and just making sure that they feel supported. And so I want to give credit to all of them. I know they work incredibly hard, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the positive results from spring of 2021. So with that, we'll transition now to SAT. And similar to AP scores, some note here. So what you're looking at right now, these are actually prior year's SAT, and we wanted to put these on here just to give you a sense that SAT and PSAT still matter. We're still doing them, but the pandemic has certainly changed when and how we administer those. So this is kind of our baseline, looking at where we've been in the recent past. So this is our ELA, percentage meeting or exceeding, compared to our surrounding communities. And on the next slide, you can see our math, where we are again on SAT, comparing us to our surrounding communities. And one note before we transition to the last slide is typically the SAT is taken in a student's junior year, in school, in person. It's about 3.5 hours. It's segmented into chunks. There's the math, the ELA component, writing. It's a rigorous assessment. They take the PSAT, which is the preliminary or practice, in their sophomore year. And so as we transition to the last slide, I talk about the SAT in their junior because with the pandemic, the SAT did not happen last spring. So unlike the AP, the last year's juniors did not take the SAT. And so what the College Board said was, okay, we missed that opportunity in the spring, but we want to give it to those same students who are now seniors this year in the fall. So our seniors took the SAT this past fall, and a couple notes with that. One, they offered it only in person, which meant that for those students who didn't feel quite comfortable coming into the building, they unfortunately weren't able to take it. They could take practice tests online, of course, and practice problems, which we did, but it wasn't the official through the state of Rhode Island SAT. And so when we look at these results, you can see here prior years, 2019, 2018, those are our typical scores. When we look at 2020 with that asterisk, just to note there that we're fortunate that we had vast majority of our current seniors take the SAT this fall, but we didn't get the 100% or close to 100% that we usually get. So still proud of how we did, but we want to just put that in there. It's difficult to make a direct comparison of 2020 to 2019, again, given that they're seniors as compared to juniors, and not everyone typically does it. And so when we're comparing that 2020 year, so the blue is math, the red is the ELA. We're comparing those columns to, for example, the gray is the Rhode Island. When we look at 2020 in the Rhode Island scores, the same rules that applied to us, Tiverton High School, applied to the whole state, meaning students across the state did not have, meaning seniors, did not have to take the SAT. So it didn't have all the students taking it as we typically did. But one piece that we're still focusing on, so we got the results just a few weeks ago, and our PLC teams in math and English took a deep dive into the questions from the 2020 SATs, and they looked at where our positives were, where we're doing well, but we also looked at the questions that were tough that we didn't do as well on, that many of our students didn't successfully answer. And so then we connected those questions to the standards that question is assessing, and then we connected those standards to our curriculum. And so the work we've been doing the last few weeks is saying, all right, what changes or adjustments to the curriculum do we need to make so that we make sure our students either reteach or get this content so that they're ready for when they either graduate or take the SAT again. So with that, I know that's a lot of numbers, a lot of graphs. I appreciate the opportunity to present this evening. And as I said, a lot of work yet to be done, but we're excited about the spring and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ashley. I have one quick one about the AP tests. Do the teachers get specific, oh, there you went, oh.
Sorry about that.
Okay. do the teachers get feedback about content area that their group of students may have missed on the AP exams?
Meaning,
So if, say on the US history, they said, every question about the Great Depression was missed. Maybe it's a little bit more sophisticated than that, but, do the teachers actually get that?
they do, yes. And so, again, in a typical year, our AP teachers, and typically it's over the summer and then the early fall, will look at the question, they get to see the questions that the exam asked and how our students did, similar to the SAT, so that they can then connect that to the curriculum.
From the prior year?
Right, from the prior year, correct.
They got a lot more granularity than I would have guessed.
Correct.
All right.
Again, the challenge of 2020 was for many all the AP exams, there were only 2 to 4 questions. And so the biggest gripe from the students was they did a lot of studying and they didn't even have an opportunity to demonstrate their learning because there were no questions about the content. And so it's kind of just depended on the question.
What do you mean there's only, so it's all essay based? I mean, I guess
it depending on, or like math, they had kind of longer write-out question, but there's obviously a lot of topics, and in only 45 minutes, they just couldn't ask as many questions as they typically would.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm gonna open it up to the rest of the committee. Ms. Farnworth, you want to go first?
Sure. I have a few.
Sure.
So don't leave.
Not leaving.
Okay. Just a couple of questions on the graphs themselves, and this seems to have been something that was prevalent throughout. I just want to get a better understanding of the story you're trying to tell. I'm looking right now at AP US history as my example, but I think they're all pretty much telling the same thing. So on the first slide, what I'm seeing here is the number of students in each of the years that score a 1 versus a 2 versus a 3 versus a 4 versus a 5. What is that mean score trying to tell me? Because you've got a graph that's displaying the number of students. Is this telling me that your averages were around 2?
Depending on the particular exam, yes. And the
And I'm just
main,
looking at the AP history so that, you know.
yeah, that, to be honest, that the y-axis probably should have been different for that mean score one. The tightness of those bars on the far right were really to give the viewer a sense of scale of how our average score for that AP course has changed over the last 5 years. Meaning, have we relatively stayed the same? Have we increased? Have we struggled a little bit?
Okay, and then carrying it the same type of question to the next slide as you compare to the state and globally, which I assume is, you may have said this, global is what, all of the United States?
Global, yes, would have been any student, even internationally, who took that same exam that year.
Okay, so you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I see that. So the mean score there, what is that trying to? Is that again? I don't know.
Yeah, that again, yeah, we probably should have added a separate y-axis for that. That mean scores again is to just give us a relative sense of how Tiverton High School compared to Rhode Island, which compared to global, as opposed to the specific number.
All students who took the test, so I'm showing that in this example, Tiverton was below Rhode Island by, I don't know what, because I'm not quite sure what the y-axis is.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yes. Please confirm, moving on to the SAT scores. These are 2019 comparisons?
Yeah, the first 2 graphs there were 2019. And we just wanted you to really refresh her just.
Okay.
Just so you can
Well,
see.
one of the things that I think might be helpful in the future, and I guess this is more of a suggestion for Dr. Sanchioni as well, because this isn't just a high school thing, that seeing trends is so important. Not just the comparison of us against these 6 or 7 other schools, but that's an important view, but where are we? Are we making progress? Are we staying the same? Are we going backwards? How are our students doing on their progression with these tests? Because I think the current tests are now in place for what, 3 years?
For the SAT,
SAT and PSAT to be the
This-
benchmark testing?
yeah,
Is that
2020, yes, would have been year 4, I believe, in terms of the new
it? Okay.
state
I
adjustment.
mean, the chart says to me for ELA that we are, at 65% proficient. And where that stands against the other schools on your in your cohort, but it doesn't tell me if that was an improvement over previous years or not.
Got
So if that's something we could perhaps consider next time
Sure.
around.
Yes,
And I think, and to your comments regarding 2020, it's going to be a rough year for all kinds of testing. I recognize that, and I'll be the first to cut everybody a little bit of slack. So
yeah, it was
yeah, everybody.
challenging, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, we all need to understand that. But one more. I'm sorry. We have 12 AP classes, which is great. It's certainly grown over the years. Are we still offering EP English as well?
Yes,
You said
EEP, the
EEP?
early enrollment. Yes, yes.
So you've got 2 AP plus EP?
Yeah.
Do you have
Yes.
any kids that are not in these classes?
Some, but again, yeah, we
It's
really push
great.
students. Yeah, no, it's we want students to surprise themselves and saying,
Yeah,
if you, by enrolling this, you can meet the challenge, and we're going to support you, right? It's all about high expectations and high support,
Right.
and they need that. Yeah.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dakotas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashley. And I just had a curious question. The URI and the CCRI numbers are way up, and you said, a lot of it's money driven, which I can understand. Do you think anything has to do with the way the governor has changed things too, with kids looking at that route to save the money on top of it? Is that a big driver?
Yeah, yeah. Some students, I've been pretty direct and honest with. They said, yeah, the governor's initiative is making an impact. They talk with their parents and their families, and they say, hey, we can save like tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, and they have a plan, right? They're going to enroll for 2 years and then transition to a 4-year school and save a lot of money and get a great education.
Right.
It's hard not to
Yeah,
support that.
I noticed that 2 years ago, I think that started, and you saw the enrollment numbers really jumped up and spiked. It's almost like someone saying they don't want to spend $50,000 on an extravagant wedding and have a small gathering with the just of the peace. You know what I mean? So I totally get it. So, thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Mrs. Pavo?
Nope, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Palish?
No, all set. Thank you.
All right, great. And any questions or observations from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, and then last, any of our administrators with any questions or comments? Okay, great. Thanks you very much, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Up, Chris.
So we are moving to item 9C, the FY20 audit. Ms. Roderick? Amy, I think you're muted.
There we
Thanks.
go. I think
Thanks.
Dr. Sanchioni wanted to make a quick comment first.
Okay.
And thank you for reminding them, Ms. Roddick. I just want to alert the committee. I know it's always a, perceived as a negative when we delay the audit. But in this case, I want to commend Ms. Roderick for correcting and identifying a mistake made by the auditors that she had to take the time to fix. It took a little more time than was necessary. And I know this ties the town in with the schools, but this was critical. This was critical to the school success to make sure that numbers that were in place 3, 4, 5 years ago that were misplaced were put in the right place so that we could balance. So I want to commend her for going back and figuring this out. And she delayed the process. Yes, she did, but she did it for the right reasons.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, the status of the audit at this point is I submitted those correcting journal entries to the auditors and have shared them with the town treasurer, Ms. Surratt. And the auditor, I gave that to them last week. They came back to me and said they needed a little bit more information to substantiate what I was trying to do, which I gave them today. And they said they will be reviewing it within the next 24 hours. And hopefully by then we'll be getting the final numbers by the end of the day tomorrow, assuming they have no issues. Once we have that, we can then prepare our UCOA file, which then gets sent to RIGL for validation. They have some metrics to make sure that everything we're reporting is in the right bucket. And when we have that, we then also complete the what's called the MTP report, which is the Municipal Transparency Report. That is tied into the audited financial statements and submitted to the Auditor General. So all of that, once we get the final numbers from the auditor, or blessed by the auditors, can all happen simultaneously. So unless there's anything major that comes back from the auditors, which I'm not expecting, we should be able to meet the extended deadline of January 31st.
Okay, great. Open up to questions. Mrs. Pavo?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Balch?
So I could ask during the budget, but I'll just ask now. So no surprises, Amy, did we deficit spent to the number that we had projected pretty closely?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike? Mr. Codist?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Amy for being so diligent. It's worth taking the extra time to make sure that it's correct. So thanks for going
My
back.
pleasure.
We need every penny. So thanks for being that.
Right.
Agreed. Mrs. Barnard?
Amy, when do we expect the final report to come out?
Well, it has to be complete and able to be submitted to the Auditor General by January 31st. So I would expect sometime that week prior to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know you've been working hard on this.
Thank you.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Yeah, we are. Little by little.
Okay. Any questions from any of our administrators? And any questions or observations from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Great. Again, thank you very much, Ms. Roderick, for all of your.
My pleasure.
All right, we are up to item 9D, approval of the Take It Outside grant. Mr. Carnevale?
Okay, so in your packet, you'll notice an email that we received from the Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce for a grant that the technology department applied for. It's called the Take It Outside Initiative that was sponsored by the Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. And Tiverton was awarded $65,000 to provide internet access for our students and any kind of facilities that we would accomplish outside of the building. So with that, we wanted to kind of expand the internet. I know it's cold outside, but if we want to get outside, if it's warm or anything like that, we'd be able to take the students out of the building to get internet access. So in your packet, you'll see that we got awarded that grant.
Great. Thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Did you have any collaborators on the grant, or was that your work alone, or? I just want to
So,
add that as well.
yeah, so I worked with Portsmouth and South Kingston, because Portsmouth actually got awarded the grant prior to us, and then they extended it out, which allowed us to apply for it, because we didn't realize that school districts qualified. But since we applied from the school district, we were able to get it, and we were very fortunate to be awarded that grant, because it is a project that the district would want to do, getting internet access up at the athletic field, so that when we do any events outdoors, that we have internet access up there, including graduation, where we would have to send signals up, and the cable company that works with us that does our videos here, we would have to spend hours setting up internet access so that they could stream graduation. Now that doesn't happen anymore, because we have full Wi-Fi access at the athletic field all around the track. It also will help with gym class, phys ed, with the monitors that they can put on the students for heart rate and caloric intake and stuff like that. As well as our sports, they can bring out their tablets and still be on the internet access, which is going to be great. And it does help inside the building as well, even though they are external access points. This kind of lights up the whole campus. So it's really great, and it's happening at all 5 buildings.
Okay. And how wide a perimeter are you talking about here?
So at Tiverton High School, you'll be able to catch all the parking lots, as well as the rear of the building, the athletic field, straight through to Ranger School, up into the Ranger School parking lot, and in the back of Ranger School at their playgrounds. We're trying to see how far down that access road between the high school and the middle school we can get the signal to go. And then it'll be picked up at the middle school to pick up their fields and their parking lot. And at the elementary at Fort Barton, it kind of goes off. I would say we're probably looking maybe 150 yards tops around the building. Like if you did a square, like a circle around about 150 yards out of the Fort Barton building. And in Picasset, we're going to get the rear of the parking lot, that side playground as well, and the athletic field that's back there.
Oh, great. And is that going to be a password protected access, or is it going to be available to the public as well?
So as of right now, it is the exact same access that you would have if you were inside the building. So as a student, you'd be able to walk out of your class with your Chromebook and not lose internet access. So say, for example, you were at the high school and you walked out the flagpole door or the gym doors with your Chromebook on, you wouldn't lose access until you reach the very end of Ranger parking lot, heading into the woods up near where Longplex kind of connects in. So the students would never get kicked off. We do have a Tigers guest Wi-Fi network that when fans are watching games and everything, that they could access the internet. It is a little slower than the regular network that the athletic directors and the coaches would be on, and it is protected with our filters and stuff so that they can't do anything inappropriate, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to open up the rest of the committee. Mr. Dakotas?
Yeah, Dave, thanks for doing that. Anything we can get for the district, especially from a grant, is outstanding. So kudos to you. Thanks for your collaboration.
Thank you.
Ms. Pavo?
David, is it a one-time award?
Yes.
65, okay. And I think I read it was awarded in December, what, September to December, I think it said.
Yes.
But do we actually have the money, the grant money yet?
Yes.
Or oh, good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good job.
Ms. Palish?
I'm just clarifying the item. So the grant has already been approved. You're not seeking our approval to apply for it.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And Ms. Farnworth?
No, my questions have been answered. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
I have one last question. So this builds the network. Are there maintenance costs in the future that we would have that would be above and beyond what we typically spend to maintain our internet access?
Not at all.
Okay.
The only time we'd ever have to spend anything is when we finally end up replacing all the units, which would be in the
Right.
which would be in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Logan.
Thank you. And any questions or comments from our administration?
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, again, thank you very much. This is great, great progress. All right.
Thank you.
Dr. Larkin, if I may,
Yep.
not directly connected to that grant, but while we have Mr. Carnevale on the camera, I just want to also recognize he is the esports team coach, and his team came in as runner-ups in the state of Rhode Island this year. So just making the committee aware of that.
All right.
Yeah,
Great.
2 years in a row, we're runner-up, so I'm getting close to being the Buffalo
Okay.
Bills of esports. So
Third year is the charm, David. Third year is the
Thank you.
charm.
thanks.
Do you still get a tiara and a sash for runner-up?
I think we do. If I do get one, I promise I'll wear it at the next school committee meeting.
Okay, look forward to seeing that.
Thank you.
That's what that stop camera thing is about. All right. So we are back now to old business item 8, A, FY22. Well, actually, before we do that, I'm going to ask for a motion to table item 7 right now.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. I make that motion.
I'll second it.
I'll do a roll call. Ms. Farnworth,
Yes.
Ms. Pavo,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we'll take that up at our next meeting. So now we are on item 8A, old business FY22 budget and capital plan. Dr. Sanchioni.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Larkin. And as the school committee had planned at our last meeting, tonight's purpose of tonight's meeting is to vet the request that the administration is putting before you for our FY22 budget. So we're going to compartmentalize this and break it down into its components so you understand what the request is all about and certainly be prepared to answer any of your questions. So with that said, we're going to bring up a PowerPoint. And Dave, do I have control of this or do I have to work through you? Am I working through you? I am. Okay, then if you could advance this. Keep advancing it. I'm going to advance to a bunch of slides that you've already seen. And right there, David, thank you very much. And the reason why I'm advancing through those slides, you've seen the data and the things behind it. And, you know, there was one of those graphs that I was made aware we had a town on a tax rate that was off a little bit, and we certainly made that correction. But, you know, tonight's about understanding the budget number requests and not all the factors that maybe have led to that number being where it's at. We can continue to look at that and present that, but I want the school committee and our conversation tonight to be about understanding our requests. So the best place to start is where we currently are. And as you know, when we constructed the FY21 budget, and I won't go through all the numbers on the slide, the most critical thing to remind you of is that we spent and used $1 million, the number in red, to balance our budget. And if you can move to the next slide, that was an exceptionally wise decision on the part of the school committee, because even though you used $1 million in one-time money, we were still forced to cut 24.2 FTE. You can see the list of staff positions, I should say, there. And you can also see some non-FTE positions, some stipended positions that we also had to cut to balance. And so that's important for everyone to understand moving forward, that these positions were eliminated from the Tiverton Public Schools this year. The education we're providing this year is different than previous years. Every one of the principals on the call tonight could talk about the drastic impact of not having positions like math specialists at the middle school and at the elementary schools. Chris would talk about the THS academic specialists who helped our at-risk students. Certainly every teacher on the list has impacted class size, the guidance counselor at the high school in Fort Barton. All these positions had an impact on our students last year, very positive impact, and they're no longer here this year. These positions are not here. So that's a point to start. And then the question, you know, we need to ask ourselves is, Do we want a school system that supports its students? Because the support we're providing this year is not the same support that we provided last year. And if the budget number that we're putting in front of you is not realized, that support will become even less. And so on this slide here, we're looking at the number that we're going to ask the school committee to consider and to vote on at some point. And that's the bottom line there in red, $33,981,041. And so we want to break that number down for you so you understand and be able to vet that number and where it's been devised from. And Dave, you can skip ahead a slide there. And right there, okay. So 33.9 million, I'll speak in round terms. It's a level service budget, which simply means we're not adding back any of the staff positions we cut last year. We're not adding in any new programs, any new technology, any new curriculum, any new professional development. It's simply moving everything we have this year ahead 1 year, meeting all of our contractual obligations. And again, I'm going to come back to, we're down 24.2 FTE from the previous year. So this 33.9 million budget is critical. So our budget is divided into two categories, salary and expenses. And so we'll start with salary here. And Dave, if you can go ahead one slide. And just want to break it down to its bare bones costs. So there you have it. Administrators, teachers, assistants, secretaries, custodians. You can see the numbers there. The cost of our people is $17.5 million. So that's $17.5 million out of the 33.9 budget that we're requesting from you. You have a budget book. In your budget book, you have every one of those staff members listed. You have their salary, and then you have all of our stipends also included in that budget book. So I want to express to the committee, as you look at the number we're proposing, the 33.9, and you're vetting it, understand that this portion of it, this 51.7% of it, is staffing. And I would suggest to you that there's no room at all to reduce our staffing at all, again, because we cut 24.2 FTE from the previous year. So moving ahead then, the other portion of our budget is expenses. And our request this year for expenses is that number in red, it's $16.4 million. So if you add the 16.4 with the 17 for staff, that's where you get the 33.9. They come together. So you vetted, or we have an understanding of what the request is for our staff. And now we're going to look at our expense budget. And here's the key factor on our expense budget. 4 key categories that are non-modifiable. Okay, you have our benefits cost there. Okay, so that's contractually mandated, $6.9 million. We have special education. Again, something that's non-modifiable. Our out-of-district placements, all the expenses that come into special ed, a federally mandated program, add up to $4.6 million. Our transportation budget, all our bus contracts are already signed. We know what our transportation is for out-of-district and in-district is $2.1 million. And we're calculating energy, the amount of money needed to heat our schools, to keep the lights on and everything else is $645,000. So if you add up those 4 numbers, that's 42.3% of our budget. So if you add in those expenses, the 43.2, and the portion needed for salaries, those 2 numbers alone is 94% of the $33.9 million we are requesting. What I'm suggesting to you is 94% of our budget is non-modifiable. You can't touch it. The remaining budget, the remaining 2 million or the remaining 6% is also a number that's been trimmed drastically from last year. You may recall we cut over $300,000 out of our the money we use for everything else we do in the school system. So when we talk about curriculum, technology, professional development, trash pickup, and a number of other factors that go into that 2 million, again, we want to say to you and gain your confidence that there's not a lot of places here you can look at as far as dropping down that request for 33.9 million. But to shed a little more light on that, I'm going to turn this over to Amy Roderick to talk specifically just about the 6% of our budget that we feel is non-modifiable, that's ultimately $2 million. So Amy?
Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. I wanted to just remind everyone, I know everyone probably, this is burned into their gray matter, but last year, when we had to make the difficult decision to cut the budget, in addition to staff, we started out from 20 to 21 by cutting an additional $145,000 from this remaining budget, is what I'll call it, you know, the categories that make up the $2 million. In addition to that, when we are budgeting, when we budgeted in 21, in addition to that 145,000, there were some other categories that we actually reduced just to make sure that the budget balanced. You know, some of our technology expenses, we reduced that by about $86,000 from 20 to 21. Our grounds maintenance, we reduced by about $30,000. Athletic supplies, we reduced by about $4,000, which was on top of a $4,000 reduction from FY19. And so in terms of that, we have really, I mean, we've cut to the bone, and now we're down to the bone marrow. And the categories that remain: rubbish, water, telephone, liability insurance, workers' comp insurance, things like that. Those figures are what they are, and there isn't much room unless there's sort of a major shift in sort of how we structure the school department, which doesn't seem like a feasible endeavor. And there's just some of our costs, or most of our costs, I don't want to say are fixed, but no one is spending freely. And actually, I think I've become the bane of almost everyone's existence because my favorite word is no. And in addition, I'd like to point out that if we were considering reducing any of the maintenance line items to the buildings and equipment and so forth, that's really not a feasibility, you know, it's not feasible because we don't have any capital budget to make any major improvements. So we need to maintain those maintenance budgets just to keep the buildings upright and all the equipment running and so forth. So, you know, $2 million for every other part of the budget, other than what Dr. Sanchioni described, really is almost as minimalist as you can get. And and it's not for lack of trying, it's not for lack of scouring every line item, questioning every expense. It's just where there's nothing left. So in terms of the, I guess if you would call the discretionary expenses, not much of what we have is discretionary.
Dave, if you could bring it back to a slide, the title is To Balance. Thank you, David. And so in summary now, we want to gain the school committee's confidence in this number. The budget we're proposing to is $33.9 million. It's comprised, 51.7% of that is comprised of our staff, 42.3% of 4 key items in our expenses that are non-modifiable, and 6% is everything else that has already been trimmed from previous years. We recognize that that $33.9 million is going to be hard to achieve. We looked at what the town potential appropriation could be, and then what that $1.4 million deficit is. This school system cannot absorb a $1.4 million deficit. I know I speak for every administrator and probably for every staff member in the district right now by saying to you, we look forward to you approving the $33.9 million budget, and to endorse that to the level that if you have to even put that on a ballot moving forward to the FTR, but this is the number we need. At this point, we'll answer your questions. We want to gain your confidence in this number and to move forward with it.
Can we throw up the detail that we got, the UCOA? I'm assuming that's what we're going to focus on.
So that's the operating expense, Deb, the one that has the 4 budget years. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same document.
Thank you.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes,
Okay.
because I'm assuming that's the one we're going to be going over in detail. So I just thought it'd be helpful for other people to have it up.
Can you bring that one up, Dave?
I did not, I'm sorry, do you have that, Dave?
I have the reserve analysis. That's not it, correct?
That's on.
No, it was in our backup.
So that's my fault. I did not send that to Dave. I didn't know that we were gonna go and,
I can share it.
okay.
So
Thank
you're
you. My
talking
apologies
about
for that.
the FY22 budget by OC and location, Deb?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have that. So if you share your screen. All right.
Do you see it? No?
We did.
I see it because I'm looking at it in my email. So I'm going to open the floor to questions from the committee. Ms. Farnworth, you want to go first?
Okay. I think tonight that our responsibility is to vote on the allocation, the preliminary budget request to the budget committee. Is that, because that is due this week, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe it's due to the town administrator to be specific regarding who it
Mhm.
goes to, but sure, I'm sure it gets transferred over.
Okay, and just to reiterate the fact that we are by law required to ask for no more than a 4% increase over the prior year, correct?
From the town,
From the
not,
town, yeah.
not the 4%.
And that
of the
goes to
appropriate.
that 980 some odd $1,000 that you had on the screen earlier.
that is the 4%, correct?
And that is the request, that is the amount that we are by law, the maximum by law that we are allowed to ask for.
With a
That
big,
doesn't, that
with a
doesn't say,
big huge asterisk next to it.
that doesn't say where we won't be talking about a lot more than that, but by law, I need, to make sure that we vote on the right number tonight. And this is just the preliminary budget request, and that our final budget request is not due to the town until March 13th.
That is
Just so
correct.
that we're all clear on that.
So read that number, Diane.
The 900 and, Amy, you
No,
had it on
read the
screen earlier.
total. Or someone say what the total is.
I don't have it up right now.
33 million,
Nope, not
No.
that one.
not
30.
that one.
32,506,856.
That's it.
32 million.
Do we have the hard number from FY21
Yes, we do.
that they ultimately approved?
Yes.
Yeah, Amy had that, I think, on her schedule, on the PowerPoint that Peter just gave.
Dave, could you do me a favor, please, and put up Dr. Sanchioni's PowerPoint again, and then help me to get to the slide we need to, please? Okay.
Right here.
There.
Back up. Oh,
Well, it's right there, 32,506.
32,506, is that the current fiscal year?
I know that is what we are requesting for 22. Dave, could you go back, I believe, one slide? There you go.
That's the one. So our appropriation right now is 32.1 million. The 4% increase is calculated on
Yep.
on the 4% increase from the town. Right now, the only information we have, which is very preliminary from the state, is that we are expecting a decrease in state aid,
Correct.
$606,000, and that our funding request will be 32,506,856. Again, we certainly have a lot to talk about with regard to our need for $33.9 million. But for this request of the town, we're limited to the 32.5.
Right. The only thing that would change that is if at some point that state aid decrease changes.
Right. Again, it's so preliminary right now because of our charter requirements. We're forced to do this. It's way too early to actually expect the state to even give us
So
a real number.
the 986 is 4% of the towns of the local levy, right? From
Correct, the 24.6 million.
Yes.
of the FY21 appropriation.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm not sure how we get to 32,506. Is that because we're accounting for an expected decrease in state aid?
Absolutely.
Yep. The preliminary, Dr. Larkin, the preliminary numbers from the state for FY22 indicate a $606,000 decrease from 7.4 million to 6.
Are we required to account for that in our requested appropriation,
Yes.
Yes.
even though it's not finalized?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we have to give
Not
the
there.
budget committee a budget, and that's right now, that's the calculation. I mean, Peter can certainly, give the 32,506,856, which is all we're legally able to request, but with a big asterisk that says, we're working on looking at 33,981,041. And
Right.
that, or how preliminary it is, because, we don't know what the aid's eventually going to be.
Well, I guess that's my point, that this will be the first year our state aid has actually gone down. And
For us, many communities see it every year, but yes.
Sorry, say that again.
I said for us, many communities actually see it every year.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying everything is preliminary anyway, I guess. So, which I guess sort of argues what's the point of the law, but
Well, the problem isn't the law as much as it is our FTR process.
yeah, well, you had me at the problem is, right? For purposes of the discussion, I'm going to ask for a motion that we request a budget of $32,506,856.
So moved.
Is there a second?
With regret.
Mike is seconding. Great.
I'll second that.
Okay, so let's open up the discussion. So Diane, I think you have the floor.
Sure. I think that in the coming weeks, we will be listening to presentations from our department heads. Is that correct, Dr. Sanchioni?
That is correct. Next week, you have a presentation from Sarah Krager on special education, Dave Cannavale on technology, and Amy Roderick on transportation.
Right, the three, I'm going to call them big drivers in the
Expense.
increases that we're seeing here. As much as staffing is our biggest expense, these are the big movers, if you will, from one year to the next. And, special ed in particular stands out as it has the last couple of years. And I'm looking at some of the numbers that have been provided to us, and in fiscal, and this is strictly tuition to outside sources and outside service agencies. And Amy, please correct me if I'm not quoting these numbers correctly. This is lines 5, 5, 6, 30, and 40.
Dave,
Yes.
can you throw off your PowerPoint so I can share what she's looking at? Thank you.
about halfway down the page. There it is. Is there any way you can zoom it out a little, Deb? I don't know if others can see it.
How's that?
Yeah,
That's good.
that's good. So the line items I'm speaking to are 5, 630, and 640.
Mhm.
Down this. Oh, okay, I see them.
Yep.
If I look at fiscal 19 combined, it's just over $2 million, or 2.1 million.
Mhm.
I realize that fiscal 20, it went down a bit to
Mhm.
1.9 million. And again, with the pandemic, I'm not sure what the impact was on that number.
Actually, the pandemic wasn't the driver in that decrease. We had some rollover funds in our IDEA grants, and we're able to offset some of the costs, a little high, offset the out-of-district placement costs to a slightly higher degree
Okay.
than we otherwise would have.
So in fiscal 21, which is our current fiscal year, I've got 4,453,000.
Right, so I really probably should have put an asterisk next to those numbers. So the 55640 is our regional assessment, plus some other service agencies where we have students placed. At the end of the year, we allocate out in FY21 will be about 1.6 million of that to the respective object codes. I just have no means to do that in the budgeting process right now, except potentially for a pro rata allocation. So our special education costs in 19 and 20 are probably fairly close to what they'll end up being in 21 and 22 as well, once the allocation has been spread across all the object codes.
Do we know what the allocation is? I'm sorry, Diane. Do we know what the allocation is for 18 and 19? Because we're just not seeing apples and apples. It's really hard to compare. Like, is there any way to make it apples to apples, or there really isn't, Amy?
The only way I could do it would be an estimate based on the prior year percent, pro rata based on the prior year allocation. I mean, I can certainly do that.
Or perhaps even a separate presentation that takes into account all of the special ed accounts that you will be moving funds from and to, so that we can have a good idea what the real net change is year over year.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Is that fair?
Well, will Sarah be presenting that when she comes before us?
She
She
will.
doesn't really
She will.
present numbers when she comes, though, does she?
She
I
will.
don't think she does.
She hasn't in the past.
Actually, I'm sorry, that's not correct, Deb. I have her presentation from last year, and she does show what the historical trends are and what they're proposing for the upcoming year.
And does it tie into this? Because that's
Yes, it
what
does.
I'm kind of looking for. Oh, perfect.
It
Okay,
does,
okay,
yes.
thank
I
you.
get my numbers directly from her.
Yeah,
Good,
it
thank
does.
you.
It does. I agree with Amy.
Okay.
Hey, Amy, budget item 55-110, the special ed transportation, the statewide.
Yep.
I know it shows that in years past, there wasn't an account there. Was that something that was moved from a different area and then created?
No, so what happened was the statewide transportation used to be part of our what we'll call out of district placements, which is 55630. It all used to be combined, and then the state said, no, we're not going to do it that way. You now have to pay for it on your own. And in FY21, they started doing that.
Okay, so we're gonna have an increase, so it's pretty obvious, looks like it's $80,000 increase in that transportation now.
That's correct. At a minimum, they you may not have been here when we discussed this prior, but the contract that R.I.G.L negotiated with their transportation contractor, which I believe is First Student, guarantees 180 days of payment regardless of whether we are in school or not, and that all trickles down to us when it comes to the part and parcel that that's statewide transportation. So they're paying the full boat, and whether services are provided or not, we have to pay it for our students.
So even during a pandemic, let's say we're distance learning for a month, it doesn't matter. We're locked in to pay this no matter what.
For the special, for the statewide transportation, we are. For us, we have we negotiated a 10-day guarantee where we would pay the full amount if we were closed due to COVID-19. And then after that, it's 40%, which was estimated to be their fixed costs that they wanted us to cover. I can tell you that last year, when the pandemic hit, I stopped payments to them altogether because services weren't being provided. And then when we went out to bid, this became a haggling point between First Student and basically everyone they serviced. And it was either sign on to this as the only bidder in the process with these conditions, or at some point somehow find another provider.
Okay.
So we're sort of over that.
So before we go further, so actually technically Diane has the floor.
I'm sorry.
And I just want to make sure we're kind of giving everybody an opportunity to ask their questions, and also kind of going through in a relatively deliberate fashion. So what we're looking at now on the screen, just for anybody who's watching this from home or watches the tape eventually, what you see is some of the detail of the budget overall. And because we had to magnify the screen, or the screen, what you see on the left is the FY22 request, going from left to right, the 4 columns. On the left is the 22 request, and then in the subsequent 3 columns is FY21, then FY20, then FY19. So Diane, you have the floor. Diane, did you give up?
Sorry. I put myself on mute to be polite. So when Ms. Krager comes back into us, perhaps we can take a look at this apples to apples approach, Amy, and have a separate slide with our UCOA accounts that tie to her presentation for 22, so that we can have a good idea of what's going where, because it's honestly, it seems to be a little bit of an annual source of confusion. And I understand you have to allocate toward the end of the year. I get that. It just, we struggle with it each year as we go through this. And the other, obviously special ed is a huge talking point, as it is every year. So is the transportation. We're right now projecting a rather large increase in health and medical dental, and that's, over time may change. And I really have nothing else I can add about that right now. The other question I had, though, was around electricity, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot here because it's just coming to mind now. In 2019, I think it was, or maybe early 20, I don't remember exactly when we put it into place. We signed an agreement for solar subsidy.
Just last year.
Was it last year?
Yep.
Dr. Sanchioni or Amy, have we started to reap any benefits from that agreement?
We have not yet. They're still working through their dynamics of being able to provide that back to us.
Is this what you would have expected?
It isn't, and you recall probably the presentations as well as I do. There was a lot of assurances that this would happen quicker than it did, but it's not. We're not the only school district that signed on with them, and we're all in the same.
And so did the town.
So did the town, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that was really the reason. Well, I think in my view, it was the primary reason I went along with it, was that the town had done it as well, and that we would both experience an increased discount, and I guess at this point none of us have. So hopefully in this next fiscal year, when we're struggling as much as we appear to be, it'll be good to see if it comes in. And then my last commentary here is also speaking to the upcoming presentations, and this one has to do with technology. I know that we have made, saying the word substantial is not even paying it the respect it deserves. We've invested an awful lot in technology over the last few years. And thank you very much, Dr. Sanchioni, for getting us there to the point where we had one-to-one for our students, because as it turned out, it became a critical lifeline in the spring of this year, especially. And moving forward, now we have the quote unquote no snow day policy, once we get past this pandemic. And technology, it's here with us to stay and growing ever more. So I'll be very interested to see the technology presentation and understanding really exactly where our dollars need to go for not only this coming fiscal year, but moving forward. What kind of an investment are we going to need to make on an annual basis to keep the technology levels we have for our students? It's so important and so much the future that I think special attention needs to be paid there. And I think that is the only other question I had for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. And yeah, I would agree. The investment in technology is outside of the teachers and the students themselves, and the fact that we had schools that had decent ventilation. The technology was the only thing that was the thing that allowed us to open. All right, Mike, I'm going to give you the floor.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Sorry?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Elaine?
I do have one question. Amy, 52101, the health and medical premiums.
Mhm.
That figure, the figure is that after employees have contributed their co-pays?
Yes, that is our net expense for the district.
Okay. And the other question, I think I asked this a long time ago, and you probably got it for me. I'd like to know how many retirees we have receiving the health, especially the medical, not so much the dental, because that's a lot cheaper, but the medical. If you could just get me a number and.
Certainly.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Deb?
I was just curious, this salary line, like it's pretty consistent. Is this big drop we see here, Amy, the staff cuts?
Part of it is the staff cuts. The other part of it is the allocation of the regional expenses.
Oh, so that's the issue there as well.
It's a combination of both.
Okay. And so, right, so we'll have to, Diane, that'll be good to get that spreadsheet, because it is kind of hard, because it looks like we had this big drop and then it leveled out, but that's not represent.
And that is also the same for the 22 requests, so I'll have to do it for both years.
Just a general question, Peter, because I kind of want to bring up some of the things I hear in social media, different circles, because I want to give you or Amy the chance to address them. So between 2015 and 2019, I'm not going to include this year, we had a 90 student drop. So I guess it's not like it's 90 students divided by, it's not that a 90 student drop, I guess is my question, automatically says, oh, you know what, we can get rid of 3 classrooms. So I just kind of want people to understand, although you have seen a drop in students and perhaps some of those staff reductions we made last year, accounts for that, that it's when you see a drop in students, and we don't expect it to continue, but when you do, it's not like you can just close whole grades necessarily.
Thank you, Ms. Palace. You're absolutely correct. So take 90 students and just, divide it amongst 13 grades, and you have about 7 students per grade. And at each grade level, we have a minimum of 5 classes. So you're talking about dropping class size by 1 or maybe 2 students. And again, I know the math, this is for examples only, but I mean, it just doesn't work that way. You could lose 90 students and it has no impact. It could be 1 or 2 students in a class across a district.
And when you and your administrative team build these budgets, do you look at class sizes?
Oh, absolutely. And, part of the cuts we made last year, 2 elementary teachers who were teaching split grades, reluctantly, we cut those positions, but that's what we were looking at, is what was the class size. In your packet tonight, you have the class sizes for all the elementary schools. And one of you made the request for all of our class sizes. We are preparing that report, and that will be on the agenda for the 26th.
Okay, but the larger point being that you and your team are looking at those to see.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's, that's why we're saying to you that 51% of the budget with our staff, we need that staff based upon the class sizes that we're predicting for next year. We need those teachers.
And the same question always comes up. I guess I don't really need this up, but the same question always comes, well, I'll keep it up just for a second. The same question always comes up regarding transportation costs, bus runs.
Yeah,
so
we analyze every run, every bus stop at all 3 tiers. And one of the byproducts of, as you know, we opened in a hybrid model this year, and we were restricted with 25 students on a bus, and we really had to force it to see where our stops and our students were to try to get all our students into school with that restriction. And so we kept going back to Sherry, and literally between Amy and Sherry and our administrators, we looked at every stop in the entire district for our elementary, middle, and a high school run. And what we're running right now is the bare bones minimum.
So is the assumption for the fall that for this budget 2022 that we'll be back to full?
That is the assumption, right? And again, I'll remind the committee, there's a slide in there that shows our school population, and it shows it's decreased this year. But again, we have, I think it's close to 90 families who chose homeschooling. And typically we have about 20 to 25 on an annual basis. So we would expect those families all to return, which again will be the reason why we need all the services that we currently have this year moving next year.
And then the last, I guess I have one more after this, but one of the comments I wanted to make, and I know Amy, you've certainly said this many, many times, but it bears repeating. You're not building this budget and just saying, well, I spent this in 21 and I'm going to increase it based upon 21. You're basically building this from the bottom up.
Correct. And in fact, the requests that came in from the principals and the department heads exceeded what we're requesting.
Right.
So the level funded it to, so for example, pick, any category over which they have discretion. And if they came in and the total across all 5 schools was, say, I'm throwing a number out there, $25,000, but last year our total budget was only $15,000. We only carried forward the $15,000. So there are requests that are going unbudgeted and unfunded, and that will not occur in 22, just as a matter of making sure everything is level service, level funded.
Okay. And then my final comment is, if we look at this and you see where it says it has all the operating budgets, would it be possible to throw a line underneath here to show what we were actually appropriated? Because we were not appropriated 33,201,520. I think it'll help people see that We in fact had to use revenues. on
Absolutely, happy to
these.
do that.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Amy. This is very helpful, this
Right.
schedule. That's all I have, Jerry, for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jerry, could I add one thing that I missed
Sure.
before?
Yep.
I appreciate it. Again, Amy, thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Sanchioni. For those in attendance that didn't see last night, I wanted to let everyone know that didn't know that the council appointed 3 new members to the budget committee last night. So I know that'll be coming up. So there'll be 7 total new members on the budget committee.
Mike, do you remember? Could you tell me who they appointed? I did not see the meeting.
Yeah, so last night was Dan Darren,
Mhm.
Michael Janik, and John Edward, formerly of the town council.
Okay, thank you.
This is an FYI because I know that's our next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. I have really just one, I think, quick question. Peter, if you go to your PowerPoint on slide 14, I think it's called FY22 salary summary. There's an item listed as hiring adjustments at $141,000. What exactly is that?
Yeah, we've changed the verbiage around that. So Amy, can you address that? I know you worked on that number.
Yes, we've had, so in addition to the steps and lane changes, we've had quite a bit of staff turnover, and some of the salary, we've hired some folks at a lower salary, and we've hired some folks at a higher salary. I also know that I believe we had to maintain, or I don't know if the word is rehire, some custodians in order to manage the COVID situation. So that those are just salary adjustments related to a switching over of staff.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess the more of an observation, which I guess I feel needs to be continued to be made, is that we had level funding last year and we had contractual obligations that built in an even greater structural deficit than we already had. So I think that has to be understood by everyone, including us. Is there no other questions from the committee? I'm going to open up the floor to our administrators if there's any questions from them. If you dare to wade into these waters.
No, Dr. Larkin, they're all part of they all contributed greatly to putting this thing together. I know this is not the budget they want.
Correct.
They recognize this fiscal responsibility here, but that 33.9 is the bare bones bottom.
Okay, well, I thank you for all of your work, both through all this craziness of the last couple of years, which it's hard to believe Tiverton could get crazier, but it did. So any questions or comments from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Unless
Dr.
there's any-
Larkin,
Yep.
before we go there, I do have one more question. I'm sorry.
Okay,
It came to me.
I was just going to ask if there's any more questions. So go ahead, Diane.
And I almost didn't, but on
I knew
our
you'd come through.
agenda, is that your dog?
Yes. I
On our
can't run the meeting.
agenda.
Well, I could run the meeting if I was muted. It might be, people might like it better.
No. We also have discussion of the capital plan. We haven't touched on that tonight. Do we need to also vote to make a capital request?
I don't believe that's required by your policy or charter. We typically do that after, but certainly it was on the agenda. We could show it to you tonight if you want to approve it.
I don't think the charter speaks to that, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't want us to lose track of it and then have it come back on us later that, oh, well, you didn't ask.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it speaks to it, but I mean, we could look at it quick and I mean, it's just preliminary anyway. Everything we give is just preliminary.
Right. So I'd rather vote on this first and then take that up if I'm happy
Okay.
to do so.
Is the vote specifying operational budget?
It's the 4% increase. It was the 32.
506.
Yeah.
So our operational budget, again.
Yeah. That was the motion, was the
32,506, 856.
Yep.
Is that right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay. So before that, I believe there is a comment from the public, Ms. Delcourt.
Yes, Dr. Larkin, from Jocelyn S. Given the difference between what budget can be requested versus what budget is actually needed, will the school committee consider putting their own budget on the ballot?
I can
Legally,
try and
we
answer
cannot.
that. I'm not sure that there is an answer, because whereas the charter does allow the schools to put forward its own budget onto the ballot, it's one line in the charter. It
We're
doesn't
constrained by state law, Jerry, I think.
Sorry?
I think we're constrained by state law more so than the charter. State law says what that number is, not the charter. State law says the school committee may only request 32,506, 856.
Yes, I would agree with that. But I guess I'll play lawyer for a second, which is that the statute, you'd have to go to court, actually, I think, to get clarity on the statute. We had an opinion from a previous town solicitor, which I pretty sure was manifestly wrong. And so that's why I think the answer is unclear. The charter, could be interpreted as allowing the, local entity to put forward whatever number they thought was appropriate.
Yeah, we should, maybe we could have
And look at it.
Ben look at it.
Sure.
I think
point.
that'd be a great idea, but I think the problem is going to be there's no case law anywhere in the universe or relevant example, I think, that would tell you what the answer is.
I think back to her question is, if we are legally constrained and we cannot put on what we need, certainly there is nothing to prevent a member of the public to put on what we need, including any member of the school committee. It just might not be, it just might not be able to be the official school committee's budget.
Yeah, there's
You
a
can do it as an individual.
Correct.
Yeah, there's famous, very, very famous, actually, court case called Larkin versus Tiverton, or Tiverton versus Larkin. I forget who came first. I tried to answer that question, and surprisingly, there was no question. Surprisingly, there was no answer.
I don't think in that case, though, Jerry, I don't think you were trying to propose higher than the legal max. I think you were trying to put forward a number that was below it. I think the issue that we have before us is the state law. But it's a good question for Ben.
Yeah, you are correct. We were actually trying to save money and got denied access to the ballot as a result. So, not to be too precise about the history. So a motion has been made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so the motion passes or carries. So next, I think we should turn our attention to the capital budget. Dr. Sanchioni?
Okay, we'll bring that up to you. In your budget book, you have a full 5-year capital plan. And then within that 5-year capital plan, we've brought out to you what we think are the most critical items if you wanted to pursue these for this year. But I think it's the most critical thing I can say to you is that I would sacrifice everything on this list for our operating budget. If we can't achieve the 33.9, then this is all secondary. I wouldn't trade anything on this list for that 33.9. And I hope you all subscribe to that type of thinking. But as far as our most pressing capital needs are, they're expressed to you here on this slide. You know, continuing on with the bathrooms, we know the bathrooms at the middle school and the high school are in deplorable condition, other than the 4 that we just recently refurbished. We've got some siding problems at Ranger. We've shown you pictures of these in a previous presentation. We certainly can bring that presentation back and show that here we didn't take care of this last year. It's one of those things we should fix it now before it really becomes a problem and much more expensive. The door at Fort Barton, we're going to take that off the list. We're set there. Again, our tennis courts, we put some minor fix on there. There's a few more things to do to really get that in a better place so that, again, the problem doesn't exacerbate itself. This one here, you see it's got some asterisks around it. That would be our #1 priority. And that's the replacing the kitchen equipment. You may recall from last year's presentation, we showed you some video of a dishwasher overflowing and flooding the floor. We've been cited by the Board of Health multiple times now for both our dishwasher, for our freezers that constantly break down and so forth. Most of the equipment in the high school and the middle school was purchased in the 1970s, and we've tried to maintain them the best we have. Certainly anything that's still working from the 70s, I give great credit to our maintenance department in keeping that thing alive. But that's our problem right now. These things are going to fail, and then we're going to be in a big problem. We've always talked about a heating contract for all 5 schools where professionals would come in and check the systems, balance them, change all the filters and things like that. We've had this proposal on the docket now for a number of years. And then, you know, the infamous light pole at the stadium. We'd love to have that back up. As you know, we're hopeful of playing football this March and on all of our sports. And we know that a night crowd draws a bigger crowd. I know there's some fundraising taking place right now. People are going to try to help us with that. Maybe we can take that one off the list if we can become successful there. So those are the most pressing needs, with the kitchen equipment being #1 on our list.
All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to forward this to the Budget Committee along with our operational allocation request.
I'll make that motion, especially given the lateness of the hour, but I do want to just comment that I'm not sure that I agree with the how important some are versus some of the other things that I saw in the capital request, but be other day.
Okay.
For
I think we
purposes
can
of
open
getting
it.
something Budget Committee, I make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second for discussion.
Okay, and that's where I wanted to get to. So I'm going to open it up to discussion. Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. So when we forward this on the Budget Committee, the first thing is Dr. Sanchioni will actually remove the door frame from Fort Barton. That'll be fully removed.
Yeah, I will remove that. Thank you.
Okay. And do you think for now we can remove the posts and the windscreen at THS and work on that through maybe Mr. Brigham or something with donations?
You know, that's certainly up to all of you. It's been on there now for 2 years, and it's one of those things where that problem is going to exacerbate itself. I know it's a small amount of funds. I know Mr. Brigham I think they're considering the light pole, and they've always been very generous with the schools. So certainly we can pursue every avenue.
Well, my idea would be we have 7 items on here. You're gonna have almost an entirely brand new Budget Committee. My theory or my synopsis would be to shrink it down so that there's maybe 3 items or 4 max, so it's a little more concentrated than have a bigger list. Maybe it's just an optical perception.
Mm-hmm.
It's like marking something $1.99 versus $2.
Sure.
That's the way I see it.
Now, if the committee concurs, we'll certainly adjust the list as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, Elaine, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think I want to take the light poles off the town has turned us down. I don't know. The kitchen equipment, is that the dishwasher?
That's basically the dishwasher, but there's some freezers that continue to,
Oh, okay.
you're aware of that one, I'm sure at the middle school, you know that.
Yeah, okay, all right. I just don't know how much we can whittle this down, you know, I mean, Mike's saying maybe if we could get down to 3 or 4, but except for the light pole, the contract heating, we have to do that. I'm just gonna go with, I'd like to just take the light pole off, because we've gone before the town, you've gone before the town council, and we didn't get a great reception. And that's why, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to raise what we need.
Okay.
As far as funds.
Okay. Diane?
Trying to take everyone's thoughts into context here. The original vote was for 6025. I don't know if we need to go back and
We may need to amend the original motion.
amended vote after we're finished talking. You know, Dr. Sanchioni, I understand your perspective on with having the focus on operations, and most certainly that is at top of mind for all of us. But I also don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we need to maintain our buildings. And these requests are very critical as well. The reason I say that, and of course you've only been with us a couple of years, but for many decades, I don't think either the schools or the town saw fit to maintain their buildings, their school buildings. And what came out of that was really the need to go to bond back in the early 2000s. And essentially the voters approved scrapping our, for lack of a better term, scrapping our existing elementary schools in favor of very refurbished, and in one case, a brand new one, right? We had the old Ranger School that had been there, I think, since the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. And anyone who had been in that building prior to its closing down would agree with me that there had been decades, really decades of neglect. We have 5 buildings that I would have to argue are probably more than half of the assets of our town. And I think it's so important that we, you know, I see this capital plan. I know you're developing an additional one as well, but I think it's so important that not only do we insist on what we need for our operations, but that we, you know, we make it abundantly clear that if we don't put the money into these facilities to maintain them, the same fate will befall them that befell our elementary schools. We've got how old's the high school now? 50 some?
66.
Yeah, and the middle school is over 40, yes.
76.
We made a huge commitment, right, to keep those schools functioning with new heating and roofs a couple of years ago. And I really I understand that the town is on the hook to pay for the bonds for those for quite some time. But you know, we can't lose sight of the fact that that maintenance, that improvements, I mean, this kitchen equipment, you know, this is the 3rd year, I think I see it on the list. You know, I mean, we've got to deal with this. The siding at Ranger, I remember going on my first tour with the budget committee, my first year on, and that siding was an issue then. We need to get these.
Nicole, that's the grandma.
That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
grandma.
Hey, Grandma. But, you know, and then, of course, the need to redo the bathrooms and all of that. We've all seen the pictures. So, you know, this is just my plea that yes, we need the operational funding like nobody's business, but we can't lose sight of the fact that these buildings need to be maintained.
Okay. So I agree wholeheartedly with you, Diane. You know, I think the motto of the bond to replace the HVAC and roof and sort of the other improvements in the middle school and the high school was actually asset protection. So it is easily the biggest asset that the town has, and it's this committee that has care and custody, however, so we are responsible for that maintenance. So I think that we should move forward with this list with some modifications. I think one thing about the light pole, just to speak to Elaine's concerns, yes, that the council, you know, did not have the funds to just appropriate to the replacement. But I think their, you know, perhaps unspoken recommendation is put it in capital in the budget, and then, you know, ultimately the voters via the budget committee can decide on this. Which also sort of does speak to the issue of getting something on the ballot. If this is not included in our budget request, I don't know if there's provision in the charter for putting capital things via a petitioner or other mechanism. I don't know, Deb, you have any thoughts about that? But what I would recommend to the committee, and if someone wants to make a motion, is that we amend the original motion to remove the Fort Barton door, the windscreen and posts, and the siding on Ranger, and hopefully we'll be able to find money out of operations to replace the siding on Ranger. Because I do agree with Mike that focusing on, you know, 4 or maybe 5, if we keep the siding issue on, might help clarify with the budget committee exactly what our priorities are. If anyone cares to make that motion.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Jerry, why do you want to remove the siding at Ranger? I mean, that's almost a health issue to me.
Yeah,
it's mold.
I'm
hoping that we could find it in operations. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so it seemed like a small enough number that maybe we could, you know, having said that, you know, we are so tight, you know.
I know. I'm so concerned about, you know,
I am ambivalent about removing any of it. That probably of the 3 things would be the thing I wouldn't. So that would bring the list down to 5 items that they can sort of consider.
I taking the door frame, the posts and such for the tennis courts and the pole off leaves us, I think, with 451,500. That keeps the siding on there. Has anyone else done the math?
I sort of had in my head. I would leave the pole there. That has to be replaced. That's a really significant issue. Yeah, I think it'd be great if we're able to, if, you know, the community, I will make a vow, I will contribute to that fundraising effort myself. Having said that, I think we need to still bring it before the budget committee.
What about actually removing the bathrooms, since that's the biggest number?
That is, you know, again, it's sort of like it's like the kitchen equipment. When do we not?
Let's remember this list is only preliminary and it can change multiple times.
True.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys sat on a budget committee before?
Close enough as makes no matter, frankly. Yeah.
Well, I would like to tell you that I think having a smaller, shorter list gets you a shot at getting some of these versus none of them. Now, that's only my personal opinion. When we get off this call, you might say, I don't know what Mike is doing lately, but he's out of his mind. Just
Well,
telling you how
you're
the
certainly
conversation.
right. You certainly have always having a right to your opinion. Why don't we start making some motions and taking some votes?
Yeah,
Right.
so you know what,
I still moved your motion, Gary. So that's where we started before Elaine asked.
No, I had a motion on the floor for 6025.
Yeah, so just as a point of order, we have a motion on the floor. If we want to remove anything, we have to amend the original motion. So I'm going to actually exercise my own right to make a motion. I'm going to move that we remove the Fort Barton door frame and the replace post repaint windscreen THS from this list of 7 items to leave us with a list of 5 items. If
I
someone
think
cares
only the person who originally made the motion can amend the motion.
I don't think so.
No?
No, anyone can amend the motion.
Okay.
Anyone can move to amend the motion. It cannot get seconded, it can fail, but
Or then you vote the amended motion. If the amended motion fails, then you vote on the original.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So right now I have made a motion to amend the original motion. I need a second if someone cares to second it.
What are you taking off?
The Fort Barton door and the tennis court.
That's minus 6,000 and minus 5,000.
Correct.
So you're making a motion for 591.5. I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
No,
Oh,
Mr.
that.
Otis?
You were all that.
Mike?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. No.
Elaine?
No.
Deb?
I'm a yes.
I vote yes. The motion the amendment fails. So now we have
I'd like
the
to make an amended motion
Farnworth.
for the original list minus the Fort Barton doors, the replaced posts at the tennis courts, and the light pole, for a total of 451,500.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
I vote no. So the motion passes. So now the motion on the floor is to forward the bathrooms, the siding, the kitchen, and the heating contract. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
What will that bring the total to?
451?
I had 451,500. Let me just check it again, okay?
So take about 151 off. So yeah, it should be 451,500.
I'm just an accountant during the day. I can't do anything without a calculator. Oof, I came up with a different.
Dr. Larkin, can you please go over what you want to remove again, one more time?
So, well, what I want.
Not what it's what we voted to remove.
Yeah.
The
5
motion.
was king.
The motion.
Anyway, the things that have been left on the capital requests are refurbish the bathrooms, replace the siding, replace the kitchen equipment, and the maintenance contract for heating of the 5 schools. What was removed was to replace the door frame at Fort Barton, replace the posts and the windscreen at the high school, and to replace a light pole at the stadium. those were the three things that were removed. So 151,000 of the 602,500 requests were removed from the original motion to forward this to the budget committee.
Okay.
So any other discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote. Actually, is Julie still here? We should open this to the public if there's any questions or concerns.
I am still here and there are no comments at this time, Dr. Larkin. Thank you.
One can hardly blame them. All right. Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Mrs. Palish.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, even though I hardly ever vote no, but
Yay.
all right. So that passes. Are there any other issues that we need to address on the budget for FY22, Dr. Sanchioni, at this point?
Not at this point, Dr. Larkin.
All right. So, okay, you're all still here. All right. So, going back to my agenda. So we are up to 10 announcements, scheduled meetings, and reports. So we are scheduled to meet actually this Thursday at 6 o'clock with Attorney Scungio, and then in joint session with the Town Council and Budget Committee at 7 o'clock. And we also are scheduled to meet on January 26th and February 9th. Any other announcements or reports?
We have the finance subcommittee meeting, Diane, Dr. Sanchioni, Amy, I believe that's on the 19th, correct?
On the 19th, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Sure.
Second.
All right, are there any objections? Any objections? Any opposed? All right, take